defender turns their head slightly and you cut while the defender is not looking, is what we call a jump cut. And then a camper is a player that's just sitting in the middle of the 8. We also consider that a cutter. I teach my girls how to play through contact and having their eyes up while they're cradling. Faking, this could go so many ways. I didn't even expand on faking, you could add a lot to that. Dodging, we have face dodge, which is just straight across your face. Split dodge would be between your legs. Roll would be rolling across your defender. Oh, let's see. Step here. Step here and roll across your defender. And then jab is just like a quick step, a quick jab step in the table lane. Shooting, going directly at the cage, going across the cage, free positions, quick sticks. Flicks, again, this one, flicks is a pretty advanced concept that maybe your girls might not use. I have one that's really good at it though, where she'll be on this side of the goal and she'll receive a pass here and then she'll flick here. Some call it shovel shot. My girls have a good tendency of making sure they get a lot of power on it as opposed to kind of just like shoveling it in. We call them flicks though, and we work on them all over the cage. Basically it's your back to the cage. And then picks. How to set a pick and how to roll, which actually is a very complicated concept I've learned for even college players. You could expand feeding too, but I haven't.
Do you have any take on these, to the different age groups that you have on here?
Yeah.
You know, I think we have a tendency, you know, let's just call it 3-4s, you know, we're shooting hard, you know, if you're coming over the top, etc., we're not going to do some of these others.
Yeah.
Do you have a theory that goes, no, play with them all, or get one right and then move on?
I honestly feel like once you've taught them the basics, so let's talk about shooting. As soon as you've taught them how to shoot overhand, if you feel like they understand that concept, I would totally encourage them to just be creative.
Just play.
Yeah. I wouldn't just give them a ball though and say try it until you've taught them the fundamentals of how to do the basic.
Yep.
And I don't even know that an overhand shot, I haven't done enough research. I don't even know that an overhand shot is necessarily considered the normal shot anymore in lacrosse. I enforce it for my girls because I think it's the most accurate and reliable. As soon as they learn that concept though, and I tell my girls this all the time, try flicks, try quick sticks in practice, in a game, maybe not, unless you've shown me that you can do multiple reps and can execute it. But again, that basic, and with all of these, you could implement that of learning the basic and then really teaching creativity. That is one thing I learned, for better or worse. The 2 coaches that I had at BYU were very traditional, very much about like the letter of what's been done in lacrosse for years, which really taught me the basics of lacrosse. I feel like I learned the basics of lacrosse really, really well. But lacrosse has changed so much over the last couple of years that you really have to be creative. It's part of the game now. So that base and then creativity, I definitely think, is the second part. And I will actually get to that at the end of the presentation. Did I see another hand? Okay. Midfield. These ones I think are a little bit more self-explanatory. I'll point with a pointer and not a stick. So that's a little bit easier to see. Reflexes and ball tracking on the draw. Pushing versus pulling on the draw. Circle positioning, boxing out on the draw, all sorts of these skills. The draw I learned, I never took the draw as a player. It is a chess match between you and the other team. Once you get into the higher levels for your little girls, it's really just learning how to take it. But there are lots of different variations of how to do the draw. Transitions, ball movement in the midfield, moving from defense to offense. We have a fast break to slow break. Again, I'm exploiting my team. It's a good thing there's no college coaches here that we play. Redefend to defense, so marking up on the clear, and then we make assignments in our redefend. So there's midfield skills. Any questions there? Defense. Our defense is actually a little bit specific, and I'll explain it to you quickly so that you can see where I'm coming from. It's fairly unique, I think, to a lot of girls lacrosse, and a little bit more traditional for boys lacrosse. But what we do is, if the offender is coming straight down the lane right here, we, and the goals, the screen right here, we stand off of the player almost at a perpendicular angle with hips. So Aubrey, will you just stand up and stand here? So if her hips are facing directly towards goal and she's carrying the ball, I would almost have my hips perpendicular to hers, like they would make a T if we were to meet, because I'm really trying to force her to take this lane right here. And then as soon as she comes closer is when I make my body contact. That is a fairly advanced skill. That's how my team plays defense. The reason I feel I need to explain it is because that's where a lot of these terms are coming from, is that sort of defense. As opposed to, this is a great defense too, to just stand in front of the player and teach
Well, why
your
do
girls
you
how to
want
stay
them to
on.
go down lane? Just because you want to direct where they're going?
Yeah, because I don't want offense to decide what's happening.
Yeah, so
I
you
want
want that.
defense to have some sort of say in what's
Yeah.
happening.
So you kind of open it to them and then
Correct.
take it.
You know, as a defender, you can only react to what the offense is doing. So by standing to the side and only giving them a lane, we feel like we've at least taken away 50% of their possibilities.
I guess that will only work if your defense is really fast.
Yeah.
Yes, which I've actually, yes, and I should tell a
I
story
was
about
thinking
that. My team's defense has been really fast the last couple of years. A lot of my players are shorter than I am, which is, we're a short team, pretty short team. But we're fast, so we've played this defense for the last couple of years. This year my team's a little bit taller, a little bit more sturdy, so we've actually scaled back a little bit, and instead of playing this drastic perpendicular, we play a little bit more of like a 45-degree angle, so that we can meet that player. Yeah.
So do you on defense, do you never teach just brick wall, straight up defense, you
I
always?
don't. No, just because even in high school, I felt like you were just reacting. And as a player who's especially just learning the sport, I feel like I personally thrive better under being told how to turn a player as opposed to stay in front of them and then run with them.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a
Well,
lot
the
of
problem
guys.
with girls lacrosse is, I mean, defense, you can't beat them because you can't physically stop them. So you have to use team defense.
Correct.
So.
And at least if you can push them in a direction, then your goalie knows where they're going. They can position themselves a little bit better in the cage. And I think for little girls, this concept is actually a little bit easier than saying stand in front of them, because what they're going to do is they're just going to like backpedal and like move with them. But at least if you put them to the side, then they're running next to them and have a direction out of the 8 as opposed to backwards into the 8. Does that make sense? Okay, that was a lot for that slide, but body position, so that's what we call it. Forcing to your pelt versus forcing low. You can also say forcing to the left hand if your team is advanced enough for that. Making contact, I'm a big sticker on this here. 2 hands on your stick is, I think, really, really important. Marking up on cutters, staying goal side through cutters, watching hips. We call it a C slide when we approach the ball carrier. It's just walking out to the carrier, the ball carrier, instead of being on your heels here and the ball carrier just coming. I try and teach my girls to at least take a few steps forward so their momentum is moving.
And when you said watching hips,
Yeah.
can you say more about that?
Yes, of course. So if Aubrey has a stick, you're doing my guinea pig. And I have a stick, and she's ball carrier. If I'm watching what the ball is doing, she could be doing all sorts of stuff, and I could be falling here and here and here. But if I watch her hips, right,
I
the offense
her hips.
Oh, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes, sorry.
yeah, I get it. now.
Her hips, so that, because her hips.
Not your player's hips. yeah,
Correct.
Okay.
Correct,
The person you're
yes.
defending.
Yes.
Okay.
Just, yeah, hang on to it for you. Good clarification, thank you.
And then, sorry, just before you do that one,
Yeah.
what are you teaching, even if you're putting them in that 45, are you having them stick straight up, butt out a little bit? What's
Yeah,
your
that's
stick
a really good
position?
question. So we do, sorry, one more time, yeah. I teach my girls bottom hands here, and I teach them to look for their shoulder, not necessarily their hip here. Again, because my team is short, I try and get them high so they can still go for this interception without being all the way down here. Does that make sense?
It kind of bumps their cradle, maybe.
Yeah, their arms a little bit. As soon as they've made contact here, though, I teach my girls 2 hands because they usually have the time and space to do it. Little girls, they might not. Actually, they might understand that concept better because they could get 2 hands on and keep it straight up like this. My girls have a tendency to also do this,
Yeah.
which, as long as it's body contact in college, it's legal. But that's
Yeah, we
different.
can't do
We
that.
got
That's different. Yeah, so don't. Yeah, I know.
So really quick on it, so your
Yes.
cues when they're coming down on defense,
Uh-huh.
you're going, pick an angle,
Pick a
You're the-
side.
pick a side, pick an angle, you're then going, as they start to approach you, butt out, you're going butt to shoulder, watching hips. I'm just thinking through how we teach that coming through, on contact, stick straight.
Yep.
That's sort of your sequence.
And then
Okay.
maintain contact until the ball is gone. A lot of girls, even in college, will make that initial contact and then they'll kind of let off and just run with the player.
Yep.
And I teach my players, make sure that you keep that contact however you can, legally, until the ball is gone. Whether that's a shot, whether it's a pass, whatever it may be, it causes a lot of turnovers. Good questions. Anything else on that? On our slide, so when I make contact with Aubrey and then we start pushing to the next defender that's going to come help Mark, that we call that the slide. It will be that second defender. We create a pocket so we don't cut each other off. You know how when you have you can leave that section. So if there was another your defense with me over here. If there's another player, an offender coming down, and I make contact, and then Aubrey just jumps in and cuts me off while I'm trying to follow this offender around. Does that make sense? We work on this person making sure they leave a pocket so that we both have room to move instead of her cutting me off and trying to run her after to get back to my play. And then crash, my favorite, where everybody's just in the 8 trying to get on the ball. And then getting through picks. I tell my girls not to switch on picks. That's a personal preference, but you could do either, of course.
Do you have anything on some others just, on help? Do you have something that you, like one of the things I think our young girls have a hard time is either I'm on my girl or I'm going to ball.
Right.
It's really hard to make the decision of when do I leave my girl to go to ball.
Yes.
Do you have anything around that?
I do. I do have something very specific. I don't know if there are markers. Expo, right? Mine is really specific. Oh, those look a little bit. I don't want to ruin the work. Mine is pretty specific. And if you ask any of my girls, hopefully they would know this. When the ball is outside the 12, it's a one-on-one. As soon as the ball passes the 12, I tell my girls to slide to the help. So as soon as this player starts driving, this player comes to help at the 12. That is early. I'll be the first to admit that that is really, really early. Again, my team's strengths the last couple of years has been speed, so they can get away with that. As soon as the ball, as soon as the ball crosses the 8, that's a full crash. I find the lines are just really easy to use for players to say when it crosses the 12, this is what you do. When it crosses the 8, this is what you do. Instead of, when it crosses the 10.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, where is the 10,
Yeah.
This is a strict rule on my team too. Even if this player is not driving, is using the 12, we slide. That would be different, I think, across youth levels in the sense that they don't necessarily need to slide if the player's not driving. They're not a threat, but I make my girls do it for the principle of keeping the defense as a high turnover.
Yep. And so when you say that if they're coming in, they get inside the 12 and slide, are you doubling that then each time?
Until
So
the
you're
ball's
doubling
gone.
each time it goes
Yeah.
inside the 12?
Yeah, every single time. And until the ball is gone. So if this player comes, this offender comes in here and she carries the ball, and then she comes out here and she's still carrying the ball, and she's still carrying the ball, and she comes all the way out here and she's still carrying the ball, I still make my girls double until the ball is gone. Because chances of that player actually getting a pass off is rare, or it's on the ground.
Super helpful.
Yeah. This is a very high pressure, high turnover defense though. We play a lot of teams that, we actually have a play too, where our defense, this would be a secondary option. The defense just sits around the 8 like this. If this is the ball carrier, the person marking defense steps out, and as soon as this ball carrier challenges her, there's a slide. That could work as well, especially for newer girls who are learning this principle. I find the lines are helpful though, because they can see them.
So are you teaching generally though, as a defender, we want to engage at the 12 versus
Yeah.
let them get in?
That is where contact is made, is at the 12.
Is at the 12?
Yeah, yeah. Partly because now with the new rules, I think this is in youth too, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is there some sort of free movement in youth now, or do they still stop on the whistle?
It's
It
free movement.
is free movement. Now that it's free, so it used to be They had to stop on the whistle. Every time that there was a whistle, they had to stop. Everybody did. Now players can move, and I find that this creates a little bit more of a difficulty for defense because now they have to track even when there's a foul called. So I still have them step out so that they're still close to the ball, they're still engaged with the ball, even when everybody else is moving, because not everybody can move, which is, I think, one of the best things lacrosse has done for itself. And also one of the hardest. Conditioning now, it is rough. Any other questions? Okay. Goalie skills. I am not a goalie coach. In fact, it is by far my worst skill. I need to go to some clinics or something. This could be expanded so much. Like, you could probably think of more big skills. You could probably think of a billion sub-skills. This is just a very basic one that luckily I usually have not the luxury, but the opportunity to have goalie coaches come and teach my goalies, but I don't know a lot about goalies, so there's that one for you. That's helpful. Okay, how to make a progressive skill or plan. That was just the list. My first proposal when you're making, when you're making a practice plan or a progressive skill or drill, is to change one variation of the skill or drill at a time. Sometimes, again, we get over-ambitious where we change multiple things. And then change the second one, then change the third one. You can change as many variations as you can think of, and I think it's beneficial. I'm going to give a list of ideas of ways to change variations. You could change the equipment. You go from no sticks and no balls. I find this to be extremely beneficial, especially if you have big players. They're not even sure how to hold the stick yet, but you can still teach them how to play one-on-one defense without any sticks or any balls. Balls only with a football or something like that, or sticks only, where they just learn how to hold the stick and where to put it. You could change the location on the field. So off the 8 meter, maybe you try doing a drill in the circle, and then move it onto the 8 meter is beneficial. A goal always makes the girls more excited to play when they get to shoot on a goal. They put a little bit more attention, I think, into the skill itself if you're off the 8 meter. Sometimes when there's a goal, they're really distracted with, I get to shoot, and that's all I'm going to work on. But if they're not on the 8 meter, they don't have that luxury. They have to learn the skill. You could use the top of the 8 meter, that elbow, especially behind. The speed of the skill. I also think this is underrated. You could start a skill by walking, and then jogging, and then sprinting, of course. And then number of players, from partners to a few players to the whole entire team. Again, you could vary as many of these as you wanted, as quickly as you wanted to, when you feel like your team is understanding it. I will come back to this idea when we talk about pressure, because the idea is actually opposite. So variation, change as many as you want, and when we get to pressure, we'll talk about why you only want to change one, maybe two in a practice. Oh, principles of pressure, right here. Okay, principles of pressure. This is my favorite part of the practice plan because this is really where the good stuff comes out in a practice. You could change the principle of time. So less time is higher pressure. For example, as many catches as possible in 30 seconds. You could change the principle of space. Less space is higher pressure, which actually, it kind of depends on the skill. We could argue, my girls the other day, we were working on slides, and the closer a slide is, the easier it's actually to do, and the farther a slide is, the harder it is. So it kind of depends on the skill, but for the sake of most skills, less space is higher pressure. A smaller box is higher pressure. A tighter feed, a tighter pass, etc., etc. Those are harder to make. Move players close together so the reaction time is slower. Adding defense. More defense is higher pressure. I do this drill with my girls sometimes. They absolutely hate it, but it's, is what it is. Where we play 7-on-7, and when a player takes a shot, if she misses it, she's out. So we've ended up in situations where it's one player gets 5, and she's trying to figure out how to get the ball in the back of the net because her team wasted all their shots and they missed. But it's a really good way to teach that one player how to get through 5 players, or at least how to attempt to keep control of the ball, things like that. Fun drill, really hard if you're in it. And then perfection. This one, I'm going to be really, really careful with. Because you need to teach players how to do things right, but in games, they're probably never going to have a perfect situation, no matter how many times you practice it. Higher consequences, those, higher pressure. So I do this with my girls. We restart the ball. We restart if the ball is dropped until we get it for any consecutive catches. right? So I'm enforcing perfection. The issue with perfection is then you sacrifice speed and you sacrifice decision